In today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint these adorable little kitties in Halloween costumes on your iPad. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. On this channel, we paint digital watercolor and gouache on the iPad, and I use the app Procreate. Most of my tutorials are step-by-step tutorials that are meant to be followed along, and I have a list of all the supplies that I'm using today in the description as well as the pinned comment, so check that out. So for today's video, I'm using the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm using the paper canvas that comes with the set, the medium size, in the second texture, which is like this. So what I'm going to do is download the traceable and insert it into the file. So I'm going to go to the layers panel. I'm going to tap right here because I want to put the traceable right at the top because I like it there, out of the way. I'm going to go to the actions menu and tap on insert a photo. So that is the traceable that we are working with today. I'm just going to tap here. So it has a color palette at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this color palette onto its own layer. So I'm going to go to the selection tool. I'm going to make sure that I'm on freehand. I'm going to lasso around it. And then with 3 fingers, I'm going to swipe down to invoke the copy and paste menu. And then I'm going to cut and paste. And what happens is it ends up on its own layer. So what I'm going to do today, usually I don't use a line art from my traceables, but for today I am, because it will take way too long to do this illustration if we repeat the line art or we add our own line art, but I'm going to use the line art for today. And what I want to do is just change the color a little bit. So because a lot of the colors we are using are warmer, I want to change the line art so that it's a little bit warmer. Right now it's black. I'm going to change it. So there are multiple different ways you can change the line art color. I'm just going to go and tap on the layers panel and create another layer on top and then make this layer a clipping mask. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop in different colors to see what I like, and it will change the color of the line art without impacting the original layer. So you still have the original layer intact. Kind of an orange hue on the hue slider, and then I'm going to make it kind of a dark brown, and I'm going to drag and drop. And do you see what it did? It's a subtle change, but I think it will work really well with all of the colors that we're going to paint. So now that that's done, we can always change this later on, so it's not set in stone. But now let's move on to painting. So I'm going to paint here in this layer. This is in between the texture overlay and the paper background. So there are multiple different ways to do this. I like to go through and do all of my base colors first for all of the items, and then we can start to add on details. So we are going to start out with coloring in the cat, and then we're going to do the costume. So the cat is going to be this sort of a brown color. We're going to take this color here, and then I'm going to make it a little bit darker, just a tad, not too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm going to use, let's see, brush number 16. It has an inherent watercolor texture, and it's good for filling in shapes with a slight watercolor texture. So I'm just going to go in and test that color out. I think it's a little bit dark, just a notch too dark. So I'm going to go back and make it a little lighter. So test out your color, and I would suggest to go in with a small size. So I'm using size 2, and without lifting my pencil, I'm just going to lay down the base color for this cat. If you lift your pencil while you're painting, you will get a slight overlap. It's very slight. You can always smudge it out. So it's no big deal. If you do need to lift your pencil, I just avoid lifting. And as you can see, I have some subtle overlaps, but that's okay. I can smudge it out if I want. So I can go to the smudge tool, and I can go to smudger number 6, brush number 6, and just gently smudge it out if I want to. So there we go. And I'm going to continue to paint in the cat's body. Okay, so that's the base color for the first cat. And at this point, I'm going to do the base colors for all of the cats, for their bodies and their heads, and then we'll do the costumes. Okay, so we've done all the base colors for the cats. Now what I want to do is I want to add the cheeks with the pink. So let's paint in those rosy cheeks with the same brush. So cute. And then let's do the ears. For the ears, I want it to be a little less saturated, so I'm gonna go in this direction and test this color out. I think that's a good color. I'm gonna zoom in and just color that in. And if you want, like right now, what we're seeing is there's a very harsh line. So you can go in and smudge it just a bit. So it smudges the color in just a little bit. Okay, so the noses. So the noses, now you can paint them in pink if you'd want to, or you can make them a little bit darker, totally up to you. So this is pink here. I'm gonna go in dark and just see what I think of that. Yeah, I like that, so I'll do that. So now that's the base color done for the cat's bodies. Let's do the costumes and then we'll start adding in the details. So for the costumes, I'm gonna do this in a different layer. So I'm gonna start off with this side. This little guy, he is wearing an orange scarf and he also has a pumpkin going on. So I'm gonna pick an orange. So let's go here. I'm gonna pick this orange right here and paint in the scarf. And if you want, you can do that too. And then I'm gonna paint in the base color for this pumpkin. Okay, so the pumpkin is done, but we will be adding more details and more color later on, but we're just doing base colors. And we'll do this little stem as well. I'm gonna do this with a green. I don't think I have a green up here, no. So I'm just gonna pick a dark green that has yellow in it. And do that, there we go. So for this ghost kitty, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this gray right here. And then I'm going to go in with a softer brush. I'm going to go in with brush 21 and then just add a hint of pigment along some of the edges, but not all of them. So the edge here on this side, but not the other side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to smudge this out just a little bit to soften it. I'm gonna go up in size. Sometimes the smudger is too small. So I'm gonna do this color here. So for this little kitty, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pick this color that we had right here, this pink, and make it a little bit more intense. And then, actually maybe that's a bit too saturated. So I'm gonna go down a notch and then just color in this area. I'm going to leave some gaps to indicate a little bit of a highlight. And then we'll do the sweater in a lighter color. I think that will work well. And then for her wings, we will use this color, but we'll make it a little bit lighter. I want to paint that in. And this one, if you lift your pencil, you will see that overlap. You see it a lot more with the darker color, so it's okay. We can always smudge that overlap out. Now, as you can see here, we're struggling to see the pockets. So we're gonna change that line art color a little bit later, but don't worry about it for now. So I want this color here to be orange, and I also want this to be orange, but before that, let's paint this area. I'm gonna make it darker, because it's in shadow, so I think it should be darker. So I'm going to paint that a little bit darker. So I am going to grab maybe this color here. I don't want a very intense orange. Yeah, I think that's good. Now I am finding that there's limited contrast between this orange and this color here. So what I am going to do is I'm going to make the color of that cat a little bit lighter. I think it should have been lighter in the first place. So what I'm going to do is going to go back to that layer with the cat, and I'm going to do what I did earlier, which is lasso around that cat. And then go to hue, saturation, brightness, and desaturate it just a bit and brighten it just a bit. Okay, so the base colors for all of these are done. And now we are ready to start adding in our detail. However, there's one more thing that we need to paint. all of the stars. So let's go in and paint all of the stars. So I'm just going to grab this color right here, and I'm going to go to another layer and paint in the stars with the same brush. Okay, so now we are done with our base colors. At this point, what you can do is you can say, I'm done. That's okay. Sometimes it's just about coloring in the base colors, keep it simple. But I do want to add more detail. So I'm going to go in and do my details in a different layer. So I'm going to go into this cat here. I'm going to grab this color. And what I want to do is just go down at a diagonal and just add little stripe shapes, I guess. Little triangles that look like stripes to this little guy, just to add some visual interest to him. So with each cat, feel free to add visual interest in different ways. And maybe I'll add a little bit on her face too. Now with this cat here, what I'm going to do is grab that color and just make it a little bit darker and add a little line here, which I'm going to smudge out just to indicate shadow. So wherever there would be a little bit of a shadow, I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to gently smudge it out with a size 3. Maybe let's do something a little bit different with a different brush. So let me go in with this brush here. There's a, let's see, which one was it? Dry edge detail. Yes, I think this would be nice. So I'm going to grab this color here, and with the dry edge brush, let's just see. Yeah, it's a good color. And just add a little bit of fur. Let's make her extra furry. And maybe a little hint of darkness here to indicate that there's a bit of a shadow, and then I'm going to smudge that out just a notch. And then I'm going to go in here and add a little bit. And even here, just make it a little bit darker. So now what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of detail to the outfits. So I'm going to do that in another layer. So I'm going to go up to the top where we were and add another layer. And then I'm going to add some color variation to the outfits. So we have this orange here. I'm just going to pick that orange, and then I'm going to go in with, let's see, maybe the hard edge overlay brush, and just go in with a color that I can actually see. Yeah, there we go. Just going to add a little bit of variation. So with this brush, depending on how much pressure you use and how hard or light you press, like if I press light, it starts to erase the color. If I press hard, it adds color. So I'm just going to add some color variation to this pumpkin in certain areas. There we go. Totally up to you how much you add. And I'm going to do the same thing with the wings here, and I'm going to grab that pink and just add a little bit of pink right there. I'm using very light pressure. Very light pressure. If I use hard pressure, it looks like that, but I can erase that away if I want to. So I'm just going to add a little bit there. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just a little hint of pink in there. Now I want to add a little bit of color variation to this cape. So for this one, I'm going to use a clipping mask. I'm going to go back to the layers panel, and let's find out where we have the cape. We had it, I think, in this layer. Yes. So I'm going to go to that layer, tap on it, then tap on plus, make it a clipping mask. And then anything I do in this clipping mask layer will show up in the layer underneath. So I want whatever colors we add to only show up on the cape underneath. So what I'm going to do is grab this color, and I want to go darker, but I want to change the hue towards orange just a little bit, like brown. And then I'm going to go in with this pigment bleed brush, and let's see, maybe go down a size and add a little bit more. Maybe I'll make this even darker, very close to black. Adding a little bit of color. Little areas where it's a little bit darker. Now, what I am finding is that these pockets are really hard to see, and the reason is the line art was brown. So for these particular pockets, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where the line art was. So we had the line art here, and then we had that color layer. So I'm going to tap on that and then go ahead and add another layer, make it a clipping mask. And now what I'm going to do is with an opaque brush. So let's see, this one. Huge eraser is an opaque brush. I'm going to make this a bit smaller and then just going to go in and color over that. So what it's going to do is it's just going to make that particular section of that line art darker. So it just pops. I'm also going to do that with the eyes. I feel like they might pop a little bit more, and the noses. So for the final details, I'm going to use the colored pencil brushes in this set, which are the sketching pencils and the tapered detail brushes. I love that mixed media look, so I'm going to use tapered detail pencil A. So I will show you what the texture looks like. Light pressure, heavy pressure. And if you vary the pressure, you get that kind of line. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of detail here and there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this color right here and let's test it. It's a nice color. You can make it darker. Let's see how it looks. I think I might make it a tad darker, just a notch. And then just add a few lines here and there. And then for this scarf, what I'm going to do is grab this, make it a tad darker so you can actually see. And I might add some lines here. Now for this guy, I'm going to leave him relatively simple. I don't think I'm going to add any more detail. What I do want to do here is add some detail right here on the wings. So I want there to be a few lines that go out like this. I'm going to use this color right here and just add a few lines here and there. And I do want to add a little bit of a shadow line here and one here. And then one here and here, just to have a little bit of contrast there. And then for this guy, what I want to do is add some detail to the cape. I want to make this a wizard's cape, and I realized I didn't color in the bell. So I'm going to grab this color right here and color in that little bell, I guess, at the end of the hat. And then I'm going to add some crescent moon. Actually, this color is a bit too intense. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to add some pluses and some circles to indicate stars. Then I'm going to go to the brush library and I am going to select one of these soft brushes, Dilute Soft Watercolor, brush number 22. And I think it's a little too dark. I'm going to go in with a light base, kind of like an off-white. Let's test this color. Maybe make it a little bit closer to gray. Yes. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of color by varying my line thickness just at the bottom here. So there's one more thing I wanted to do. So the details we did on the cats, I feel like I want them to pop just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that layer, and I think it was this layer here. Yeah, so you can actually see what's in the layer just by looking there, or you can name your layers. I think that's the good way of doing it. And what you can do is just swipe to the left and duplicate it. It will make it a bit darker and a little bit more intense, so it's more visible. So that is a way of changing the look a little bit. So I'm happy with that, and yeah, we're done. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and if you learned something new, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the brush set, you can find the link in the description as well as the pinned comment.